amazing meeting that we'll be holding tonight, giving continuation to our Planetary Transition study that we are preparing together with our brothers and sisters from the beyond, and to present to you, to bring to you chapters of this amazing book entitled Planetary Transition. Before we go on, we would like to read a passage of the book Happy Life by the Spirit Joanna de Angelis through the hands of the selfless Divaldo Franco, and pray with you before we can start. And Joanna de Angelis says, the greatness of a man can be measured by his capacity for service to his fellow men and for humility and love. Great men stand out and cast a shadow. Wherever great men meet, there is an unquenchable light pointing the liberating way. The true heroes are unknown. They are more concerned with helping than with advertising their own acts. Become one of them in the silence of your achievements and the greatness of your smallness. This way, we would like to invite everyone to say a prayer together. And we would like to say this one more time. We have repetitive said in the past, and we'll say it again. During these moments that we are holding these meetings at home, we would like to remind you that you're at your home, you're at your house. So it's prudent that we find ourselves in a quiet location, free of any distraction, so that we can truly connect with the higher minds in our homes, and connect with our mentors as well. So do everything that we can. Let's do everything that we can to not only pay attention to the prayer, but to the meeting as well, and bring these enlightenments to our homes. It's the positive side that we have out of all this. Instead of being at the Spiritist Center, where we are creating the amazing environment along with the higher minds, we're doing this at home now. So it's only true that for us to really partake in this endeavor. So on this note, let us find a comfortable position. Let us find an attentive position where we can all connect with our mentors, the mentors of our homes, our family members, so that we can share this moment of enlightenment. We thank you, dear Lord, for this beautiful opportunity that we have to study, to give ourselves a little bit of time to reflect on our true purpose in life, the reason why we're here, connected with one another, sharing our feelings, thoughts, hoping that we can multiply the good and put aside all the difficulties that we have created in the past by doing something constructive, by doing something more enlightening for ourselves. This way, we ask that these words, these teachings, not only touch our hearts here, who will be following us tonight, but also in the future through the free streaming that we have of these teachings, as well as emanate these thoughts, these feelings to our family members, friends, co-workers, neighbors, everyone who may be in need of these teachings. We are thankful for the ability to have such a book, such of art of work, collaborative work, to read and to understand the higher purpose of life. We thank you, and so be it. So, dear friend, welcome again to this amazing moment that we have together, teaching ourselves. And I say this because I am learning quite a bit as we work together to bring these teachings, these chapters. We are moving along 2 chapters at a session, and we are scheduled to be finishing this before the end of the year in the month of November. But we're still halfway there. We're still in session 5, which we'll be covering tonight. We will be covering tonight chapters 9 and 10. We have covered quite a bit thus far. And in the last session 4, we studied love, excuse me, life response. Excuse me. Got lost there for a moment. Love as divine power and expected assistance. We know that we learned from the last 2 chapters in session 4 the problems that this group of assistants, Dr. White, Manuel P. and Miranda, in the beyond, as they were rescuing friends in right after the tsunami that happened in the Indian Ocean, where they came across challenges in the beyond of spirits who were really being affected not only by what was happening, but what had happened to them lifetimes ago, or reincarnations past. And they were feeling that they were being exploited again, and they had to do a tremendous amount of work to liberate those minds, so they could continue to access the minds who were tragically saved as well. Lessons of the high magnitude, unexpected assistance. We just so we can recap a little bit again, was a teaching that Manuel Phenomenal Miranda brought to us, that Dr. White, as he was helping a group of spirits, several groups of spirits, he already had pre-planned other groups of assistants to come and help. It was not only their group, but he had several groups that was going to take care of those spirits who they recently had helped, to take them from their current situation and then bring them to a better state of mind as they were put to sleep or they were calmed down. Tonight, we will be covering existential challenges, and then lesson 10 is lessons of high magnitude. I would like to bring to you, it's a lot of content. I'm going to try to go over with you as quick as I can, because again, there's a lot to cover. On these both chapters, as the other chapters as well, they're extremely important, and I did not want to take from you any information that we found pertinent, to really bring the ability for you to make your own decisions here, or conclusions, make your own conclusions to what is being said. I will bring some highlights, and we will read quite a bit, but hopefully at the end, obviously, as usual, we will also have enough time for us to make our comments, questions that you may have, and then go from there. These 2 chapters, they are, let's say, highlighted with certain events that happened with them. In chapter 9, entitled Existential Challenges, we will see Manuel Filomeno Miranda bringing to us that there was a psychosphere event going on, or difficult situation going on, in let's say the weather wasn't that great. And let's see what Manuel Filomeno Miranda brings to us, so we understand, and how we can also connect this with this message with our daily lives nowadays too. And he starts by this way: although our community was able to enjoy the sun's brightness, a dark heaviness hovered over the vast, desolate area due to the collective anguish, the despair that assailed the survivors, the rebelliousness that gripped many, and lastly, the mental disorders caused by those who had discarnated violently. We could see the vibratory storms that produce threatening lightnings above the huge, near black curtain covering the spiritual landscape. The condensation of morbid energies in the area was similar to what happens in the Earth's atmosphere when the clash of temperatures triggered storms and tornadoes. This psychosphere was obviously disturbing the afflicted survivors, who added even more to the formation of dark and threatening cumulus. It became a vicious circle, minds emitting gloomy waves and absorbing the harmful effect that hover in the air. Tenderness and compassion gripped me, and I let myself be led by the blandishments of prayer for the tormented society. I would like to bring this. I brought these passages because it's important for us to see what was happening in at the after the storm had passed, after the whole thing happened, right? But mentally, and we'll say again, the psychosphere was this exchange of thoughts, and there were negative energy, morbid energies that he brings to us. And it's important for us to picture here again that it was being emitted and it was being received simultaneously by the individuals in the area, right? We have to take in account here as well that after of what happened, many of the individuals who did not discarnate or lose the physical body, they were there, and they were feeling the desperation, the situation that was going on. And they were connecting as well with the discarnated minds who were suffering on the other side, right? So there was the receiving and giving on both sides, and this was just amounting to these formations that Manuel P. Miranda brings to us in the environment. And this happens to us in our daily lives, right? When we are connecting with whatever we want to connect, guess what? We're multiplying these vibratory fields that we're connecting with. So it's important whenever we are in a very difficult situation that we pray, that we do the best that we can to not only to connect with the let's say morbid energies, as he's using these words we're using also, but also to make sure that we're praying, we're doing something that will help instead of to amount to what is already happening. And that's why he sets the tone that he went into prayer, right? He went into this beautiful state of prayer and services that they are all in the other side, obviously helping and bringing these other minds out of despair. Moving on, this is actually very important for a foundation for these two chapters, I would say, for us to be in this state of prayer, state of having an ideal of what we need to accomplish, as we also bring a couple, the next case and couple other example highlights of these two chapters. But it was interesting that Manuel P. Miranda, as they were helping the individuals in the tragic zone, we can call this way, that his attention was called to a female spirit who was under the terrible domination of a male spirit with a dreadful appearance, physically exploiting her in a cruel manner. This is again in the spiritual realm. This is not it here on earth, as we see individuals being exploited. We see individuals being manipulated, right? We let sometimes our thoughts being manipulate us of something that has happened or a situation that we're facing. And we would like to go ahead and call this case the Cynthia case. Forgive me if I'm using someone's name here, but it is the case of Cynthia, where we will go over and try to understand what's happening here. Manuel P. Miranda brings that this is, she was crazed and trapped in her body. The tormented female was struggling amid the sensations of the advanced decomposition of her body and the painful obsession to which she was submitted. We could see the tormentor who was exploiting her emotionally, leading her to continuous fits of shouting, swearing, and madness. It is in this moment that her mother in the spirit realm also approached them and begged them for them to help her and to get her out of that situation. And she not only begs them but also gives them an account of who was she before she discarnated. And this is a little bit shocking, but let us keep the presence of prayers as we're reading this, and how beautiful the rescue is, and how we're being helped on both sides of life. She says the following: "My daughter, she began in tears of resignation and a feeble voice, was a seller of illusion. She became a professional at 14 years of age, when she was married, according to our custom, to a much older man with a respectable appearance, but a vile character. The wedding was elaborate and joyful, but after 2 months, he sent her to an expensive brothel that he owned, where inexperienced and dreamy girls sold their bodies for the pleasures of the flesh. It's important to say here that he also gives the account. They are of the Muslim faith, and the very orthodox in a way. I would like to describe the way that he brings. He doesn't say that, he doesn't use that word, but the way that her father discarnated after she engages in certain behaviors, and also the way the mother also discarnate, beyond. Because of her situation. It's very interesting, to highlight this as well. It's not, I didn't bring in for us to read, but I want to highlight this before we continue. But this was her situation right now. And she says the following. She continues by saying the following: my little girl was basically forced into carnal exploitation. She received proper training for that line of business. She underwent surgery in order to prevent pregnancy, and was caught a very particular very particular kind of seductive, dance. And she actually went into, after this training, to become well desired in that situation, the brothel. And the continuation is that my daughter had gone mad with a disease I could not comprehend. From one moment to the next, she would become violent and aggressive, dangerous and evil. She took pleasure in terrifying the servants and even some of the clients, who lamented her frequent changes of personality, which disconcerted them in their vile association with her. No one knew what was happening. She began to lose weight, to languish, as if her energies were being sucked out of her body by a strange and malevolent force. For me, the moral pain was too much for my fragile strength. I couldn't handle the continuous anguish as a result of my immense love for her, and I died of a heart attack. There was no doubt, and this again, our friend Manuel P. Miranda explaining, there was no doubt that the young dancer had attracted a terrible lover from a previous existence, one that had been physically connected to her while she was in the physical body. Jealous of her loose conduct, he began exploiting her in her sexual perversions, usurping her emotional energy, and frequently causing her to have terrible obsessive fits. Here, would like to make a pause and try to understand her situation. We can analyze and say that, okay, yeah, she was brought into this condition. She was forced into it at a very young age, and only God has the ability to help understand. Really, even as much as we read, it's it's a tough example to digest, but it's not by chance that our dear friend Manuel Filomeno Miranda is bringing this to us. And we want to make sure that we bring this to heart in a way that he's just really enlightening us the condition of the spirit after that certain discarnation, and also the association, as Manuel Filomeno de Miranda is bringing at the end of this slide, with her obsessor. And there is more to this that we would like to analyze, but let us go straight to the point. He says, I examined the obsessor's psyche and perceived mental scenes involving the most shocking aberrations. Along with his revolt due to her death caused by the tsunami, which threatened his exploitation of her energies. So deep were the links between them, perispirit to perispirit, that he stuck to her like a mollusk to its shell, perversely threatening her. So we see here that the help is not only going to the afflicted young lady, but also to the obsessor. They're being analyzed simultaneously, so the help can come on both sides, because there is no such a thing of helping the person who is being obsessed and not understanding what is the cause of it. For some of us, this is very difficult, because we tend to put aside the oppressor, the obsessor, right? We tend to say, this is the tough part. And we do this to ourselves sometimes too, because we tend to hide ourselves from the cause of our problems. But we have to understand as well that the connection is perispirit to perispirit. That wouldn't haven't been established if there was not an open outlet, and we'll see this word here, from the obsessed spirit. In other words, let's just continue on, and we'll see a little bit better of what Manuel Filomeno Miranda, Mr. Miranda, is actually saying. Once I was able to make the spirit sleep because they applied passes on the young lady, I began disconnected from its organic viscera with the physical body with the help and kindness of Abdu. The two closely linked entities reminded me of conjoined spiritual twins. The evildoer shouted deliriously, afraid of losing the prey he had exploited for years, while Abdu spoke with him kindly but forcefully about the crime he was perpetrating, informing him that his exploitation ended with her death, which had effectively separated them. Now he would have to face the adverse consequences of his cruelty. They were conjoined twins. That's how much, were spiritual twins. That's how much connected they were, that it gave Mr. Miranda this impression of connection. The proper procedure was to put him to sleep too, in order to provide liberating measures at the time when she would be able to contribute with renewed thoughts and sentiments. Their attraction had been the result of her behavior, which in turn had facilitated the perfected identification between the plug in her crown and sexual chakras and the outlets in her aggressor. So we see here that no matter how much we want to run from the situation, there is a connection. A connection was established. There is force, yes, to bring this spirit at such an age of her incarnation to this location. But obviously, there was in her position as well, a condition that she let this happen to this degree. And many of us may say, look, she had no other choice, or she, in fact, yes, I mean, this could have happened. We don't know, and we're not here to judge. But the case gives us the ability to understand that there was a connection, a mutual connection between them. And the Mr. Miranda also brings some enlightenments to us, because we can analyze this to a degree of, perhaps she was paying something from the past, or perhaps she was she had to be to been put through this situation for her to learn something. We don't know. However, he says the following: the divine laws would never resort to the means of retaliation common to human beings who delight in rendering justice using their own unfortunate conception. No one is on a position to redeem moral and spiritual debts by making themselves victims. That is just never the case. Because if true, it would be a lamentable failure of the codes of divine justice. So we see that from in one side, that the divine law does not allow us or anyone to retaliate. So much so that the obsessing spirits, he was also being helped. In her case, we cannot, or not only her case, but all of us, we cannot enter the false idea that we are in a position to redeem our moral and spiritual debts by making ourselves victims, or allowing ourselves to be victims of a situation, of a person, of a condition, whatever that is. We have to use our energy, we have to use our conditions to fight what's wrong, fight what's negative, and vibrate with what's positive, with what corresponds to the divine justice, which is rehabilitation, which is life in its essence. So this is very enlightening to us, because let us not fall into this idea that we are in this position that we can redeem ourselves by making ourselves victims. No, in many cases of the Gospels, the teachings of the gospel, we see that Jesus always reminded us to stand tall, to work hard. It wasn't going to be easy. When he called the disciples into the work that they were prepared for, he never really made it easy or say that it was going to be easy, but to really work hard at it and do the best we can to serve one another. And it's interesting enough that we see this as well with the message that we read earlier today with Joanna De Angelis. Then he continued, the mechanism of reparation are part of the higher laws of life, and they never fail. Nonetheless, the pride and intemperance of those who feel they have been harmed transform them into vigilance, caught in powerful webs of crimes unknown to society, but which they will always have to face. Retaliation in any position. Since we're talking about this case, it's important to say that she, in a way, retaliated against those who came to visit her at the brothel, as her mother described that she was actually doing so. She probably was trying to retaliate against the man who put her in this position. We don't know. The same thing with this individual who is now causing her this despair that he created in the physical life. And it's important to say also that that he was dealing with this case. He was really happy. I shouldn't say happy, but baffled. He found very interesting to deal with a case or to analyze a case that started between two spirits while they were incarnated in the physical body, right? And it continued after they passed. She passed, and also he lost his physical body. And what was happening is that he had the obsessor no longer had the capability to feel the pleasure that she was providing when she was conducting, when she was performing such behaviors that she was in the past, because now she was no longer in the physical body. So he was dependent of that feeling, just as we saw as conjoined twins, or the connection that they had established between them two. So it's an interesting part to share with you as well, that for him it was a study case that allowed him to understand better how we are connected. These are the final comments that he brings to us about this case and about this chapter 2 that enlightens us so much, that obsession always presents surprising aspects because of the mental and spiritual organizations that vary from individual to individual. So this is something that there's no case alike. It varies. These things vary. So we don't want to go and apply this case to similar exploitations that we come across in our lives, and we have to really be careful about this, because we don't want to create images or situations that doesn't exist. And it varies. It certainly varies, but it is a mental and spiritual organization. Observing this perturbing phenomenon always makes us ponder the inner behavior of the human being, always proceeding from the mental field, radiating in all directions, and turning into other compatible fields and vibratory areas that provide connections by affinity. So we think that, this has no repercussion on someone else's life. If I think this way, if I act this way, it does, friends. It radiates everywhere. And guess what? As we think, as we feel, it brings other feelings, alike feelings, that are connected simultaneously to these feelings that we create. It's this connection by affinity that we have to be careful. So everything that we think, everything that we feel, whether we verbalize or not, whether we exemplify or exteriorize in any way, shape, or form, the thought in itself is an act. And that's what that is the reminder that we like to bring here. If you would like to read the book Thought and Life by the Spirit Emmanuel, I'm looking down because I have it right here next to my computer. And the Spiritist Society of Baltimore have done an amazing work as well of doing a study of this book. And you can rescue the videos of each chapter that was done please do so. And Emmanuel talks a lot about this emission and the reception of thoughts and feelings that it is inevitable in our state of mind right now. And then Mr. Miranda continues, when people finally grasp the fact that they are responsible for everything that concerns them, individual and collective behaviors will certainly change. They will choose what leads to harmony and happiness, even if it takes a lot of effort, rather than the exhausting pleasure of one moment with its disturbing long-term consequences. In their organic illusion, however, they prefer the intoxicating of unhealthy, irresponsible enjoyment to the point of exhaustion, holding on to absurd ideas of finding miraculous solutions when the inevitable afflicting consequences manifest. So we take it to the extreme. We're not only not paying attention to our thoughts or our feelings, but we take it to the extremes. We go to the exhausting pleasures, right? As in the consequences are of the same nature that we have then have to come back and fix it, clean the mess that we made in the past, right? So why not think before we do? Why not think and act more positively, if we can say that way? We can ask ourselves that way before we get hurt or we hurt others as well. Because it's important to remind ourselves that not only she was being afflicted, or not only the obsessor was afflicting the young lady, but the mother of this young lady, the father as well. So there is a whole context that we're not bringing here. What if this individual, in many cases, we can bring to correlate in our lives now, have siblings, right? So we can only start to dig a little bit so we don't get into other situations here. The amount of suffering that comes along with these small cases, or the excerpts of a case, if we can put it that way. So suffering is everywhere, right? Many people suffer. It's not only, we don't live by ourselves. It's not saying, okay, this thought or this feeling is only going to bring consequences to myself. Because if I'm suffering and I am somehow loved by someone, which we are, we all have those who love us here on earth, incarnated, as well as on the beyond, starting with our mentors, obviously. They suffer with this. They feel the unhappiness, the unsettled heart when we are going through it. So it's important for us to highlight that as well. It is not surprising, he continues, that a large number turn to Spiritism and mediumship looking for a miracle cure for the problems they created and want resolved, but perhaps without making a selfless contribution. Bringing these teaching to ourselves, Spiritists, those who are following Spiritism, we do the same thing. Existence in the physical body is a learning opportunity that life grants the spirit for its inner growth, providing it with the appropriate resources so that the divine spark existing in everyone may reach its fullness. Depending on how individuals behave, they will be solving the events of their futures, which they will have to face in order to recompense themselves and fix what was damaged. The teachings are just amazing. A reminder that there is a law of consequences. We cannot hide from it. Each reincarnation is a sublime divine concession for the blissful construction of personal immortality. The difficulties that we receive in our lives, it is only meant, as Manuel de Miranda brings to us, it is only meant to liberate us. It's not for us to retaliate or to create more issues in our lives, right? If we come in contact with a tough situation or a condition, a harsh condition, we can all explore the reasons why. We can all think, okay, maybe I did this, maybe I did that, maybe I'm connected with this person, with that person. But the main thing here is to find, if you would like to find the reasoning why, it's okay. But the idea is for us to sublimate, right, or to construct something better out of it, to remove the debts that we have inside of us, not by creating more issues, but to truly to say, okay, this is not going to happen anymore, right? And here, um, we urge you to please, let's see, because I found myself doing a little bit of this. How would have this young lady have should have conducted herself being placed in this situation? We don't know, but the case is before us, so that we can do the best of ourselves, do the best of our situation, and not retaliate, because we saw that the divine laws are not based on retaliation. It's based on ascension. It's based on life. It's based on multiplication of what is good and what is compliant with these divine laws, which is all the positive things that we have in our lives. So it's a beautiful and an amazing example, a little bit harsh, or quite harsh, if we can say that way. But it's definitely a teachings for us, the mothers, the fathers, the family circles that we are trying to preserve and to really make our environment better, since we start with the psychosphere, right? What are we thinking? What are we feeling, right? What are we sharing with one another in terms of thoughts and whatnot? Moving along, we would like to bring some of the highlights, which is quite a bit of the chapter 10, lessons of high magnitude, right? We want to also ask you to keep the prayers that we saw with at the beginning of chapter 9, right, that Ms. Miranda brought. But here we're going to take it to a next level, right, because there are really two interesting highlights in this chapter. And they continue to work in the areas where they were in the area that they were being called to work and help the individuals. And he says, our work required effort and selflessness, because the more we assist the suffering spirits, the more others arrived. As bodies kept washing up on the beaches, or as the result of the discarnation of traumatized individuals that had lost consciousness, and who, because they had not received assistance, had not survived their injuries, the withering away of their energies, malnutritions, or infections. And he goes on to bring to us what was happening at the location, the physical locations, right, of that was struck by the tsunami. He says, Anna continued holding the torch of luminous fluids to light up the spiritual night, while at the same time contributing her invaluable help. I would like to remind you that Anna was the assistant of Dr. White and of an Anglican faith, right? And we had several individuals here. We have Dr. Miranda, we have Oscar, who was of a Jewish faith. We had soon we'll see the Father Marcus, which was our friend or a representative of the gospel as well, the Catholic faith, as well as Dr. White of a Anglican faith as well. And all of them were helping, and Abdu, excuse me, I was forgetting Abdu as well, of the Muslim faith. All of these individuals, they were contributing to, in that location, the way they could contribute to bringing them enlightenment in their own faith, right? So we see this United Nations in terms of religion helping all of these individuals. And Manuel P. Miranda now in this chapter brings the as a highlight on how Father Marcus was speaking to those individuals who were at where they were helping and attached to their material remains. His voice, he was actually just talking to them and these individuals who were there, and he said that his voice was sweet and gentle, and he informed them that death should not be seen as a big disgrace. I brought up most of it here so we can see this conversation with these individuals the recently discarnated ones, and I took as if it was a prayer as well, because it's such a beautiful reminder. And I'd like to read this with you because it also can talk to us in a higher level, hopefully. And he said the following: everyone when born, this is Dr. Marcus, I'm sorry, excuse me, Father Marcus. Everyone when born is marked to die, he said, because that is the cycle of life. The opposite of life is not death, but rebirth. Jesus died in order that he might rise on the third day, demonstrating immortality and communicating with his beloved friends who would be left behind, awaiting the confirmation of his luminous words. Thanks to his return, the gospel was confirmed, and the message it carries become one of hope, so that all those who suffer at the edge of the abyss may not yield to fear or discouragement. Thanks to his return, the gospel was confirmed and his message, excuse me, I repeated that. Therefore, trusting that beyond death, there is a realm that await us all is the duty of every Christian whose doctrine is based on the certainty of the victory of life over the demise of the grave. Happy are we who believe in our Lord Jesus Christ as the way, the truth, and the life. We are bound to him by the love that gives sustenance to our emotions. Death is life, and misfortune is a blessing, because nothing happens without his permission. And then he encouraged them by saying, confront the storm of despair like his disciples did when, filled with fear in the fragile boat during the storm, they begged for his help, and he calmed the winds and waves. In him we have the confident mariner who will guide the boat of our immortality to the sublime port of peace. So fear not, be confident, and help us to help you. As frightening as physical death may seem, life is a triumph over all injunctions, and nothing can destroy it. Therefore, to leave your useless corporeal vehicle behind, thanking it for its help during the journey you have just completed, and to advance confidently on the course of immortality is cause for endless joy. You will meet once again the loved ones who preceded you, immortal, who have been waiting for you in order to reorganize your families through the blessed bonds of love. So rejoice and have faith, for your present suffering will soon be a chapter in your past. So this again is as he was saying these words, they were helping all of these individuals who were recently discarnated, and they could see that as he was saying, as in the information was being processed, they would fall into this deep sleep, and then carried over by the other teams that were assessing them, as Dr. White, as we saw on previous chapter, that the 2 chapters ago, that he had already organized for them to come and help them as they were talking to them. And the another highlight here, besides the message in itself of reminding ourselves that in those, obviously, when he said this, that Jesus had brought this information to us before about the life after life, right? That this life in the physical body is temporary, right? And we have to rely on him if especially if we are of the Catholic faith, that life will continue. And we need to comfort ourselves and be courageous with his message to go on and to meet again the loved ones who have been waiting for us on the other side. As we have said earlier, we have loved ones. We have people, spirits, higher spirits, evolved spirits who love us, who wishes that we do well with the continuation of our lives. Not only this reincarnation, but reincarnations that follows too. So it's important that we start this connection now, right? And this rely on this now. However, unfortunately, the individuals, not all the individuals that were there could be helped. And as he continue, and the work of help with these recently discarnated spirit who were still connected with the physical body continued, they could see that not everyone was responding to it. They also, and they saw, Mr. Miranda actually mentions that the awful phenomena of lycanthropy constrained us, leading us to reflection, both in relation to those who suffer the affliction as well as to their defenseless victims, who were, after all, victims of themselves. And you may ask, right, what is lycanthropy? Well, the dictionary, under the dictionary.com, we found out that it is a delusion in which one images oneself to be a wolf or other wild animal. The supposed or fabled assumption of the appearance of a wolf by a human being. Their state of mind was so detrimental, if we can say that way, not to use other words, that they really looked like animals, right? Their condition was so tragic that it was very difficult for them to show themselves as a human-like spirit, right? So, and it's even hard for us to think and try to explain such a thing, but very difficult situation. And as Mr. Miranda was actually saying this, he started not questioning, but giving some highlights of what he encountered, but also he still needed help. And that's when Dr. White later on comes and gives us a beautiful explanation that we will read together. As we promised, we don't want to go ahead and take that away from you. We urge you that you read the book, that you really sit down and study, not only read it, but study, so you can make your own conclusions and you make your own highlights, because what I'm bringing here is very superficial, and some of putting myself aside, but some of the highlights that I think is important for the times that we're going through. But do read the book. So Mr. Miranda says the following: ignorance of the law of life immerses the spirit in the most abysmal state of primitivism, uninterested in the ascent that would lift it above its deplorable situation. My mind harbored no sentiment of reproach or criticism, because somehow we're all travelers in the night of dense darkness, heeded for the bright and shining day. I'll urge you again to please take the same approach. We're not here criticizing. We're not here putting towards the teachings here that we'll face soon. We'll come across soon, criticizing this or that faith or that condition, but for us to really bring to ourselves our ascension, as he's saying here, right? And leaving aside this feeling that we are dependable, or that it's someone else's responsibility to change our lives. And we see what I mean. I don't want to give up too much, because the explanation will come with Dr. White's teachings. The religious atavism that promised them first fruits and states of glory after biological death sustained some who were aware of what happened as they awaited the arrival of mythological angels. However, they would soon fall into despair, blasphemy, and rebelliousness, complaining about their supposed abandonment. Besides being a profoundly thoughtless attitude, this transfer of responsibility for our actions to the Divine One is very convenient, because it provides a totally distorted view of reality, transferring it to the world of fantasy and magic, where anything is possible. I would like to make a parenthesis here real quick. Last week we had an amazing discussion about faith with our dear friend Giulio Padovan. And if I can make a parenthesis here and ask you to also, after we bring this, or even before we read this topic right here, that we go back and watch his talk again, because there is this amazing explanation on what is faith, right? On this work that he have put together, that we believe that we can explore further the information of what the idea of faith is, that we need to grow still more to understand our own faith, or what we're responsible for or whatnot. And here again, Dr. Miranda brings this highlight about our own faith, on how we rely on other aspects of life, other people, on how we transfer this to this responsibility that we have to others, that after we discarnate, we will find ourselves taken care of, right? When we're not taking care of ourselves now. And here's the explanation of Dr. White. Bear with me, this is 2 slides long. And it's important that we go over, and I'll do some highlights as well as we go along, but I'll try to make this quick but effective for all of us. And please go back and read it, because it's very important. Dr. White, as he was actually listening to this whole thought process that Ms. Miranda was having, he says the following: "My dear Philomeno," he began gently, "you know that all occurrences contribute to our growth towards God. Despite our immense respect for all religions and their necessary role, for so far, they have been based on magical and non-rational conduct, unfortunately. They do not hold their adherents responsible for their aces, which accounts for the consequences that always reach them, usually in a climate of distress as a result of a negative moral content." So you give this false sense to individuals, and individuals are given this false sense of what religion is, and when it comes the moment that they need the most, guess what? They're more lost than ever, right? In presenting their special gods or prophets, some of whom suffer from behavior disorders, blending truthful information with their own conflicts, thus giving rise to nullifying and preserve reservation, they claim to be responsible for the Word of God, humanizing and limiting him to their passions rather than the imperishable greatness and infinitude of the Creator, and giving those revelations the appearance of indisputable truth, more concerned with outward formulas and precepts than with the internal sentiments of devotees. They strive to attract more adherents without the least concern for qualifying them for their brief existence on earth, and consequently that immortality after the body. Unable to understand the absolute causality of the universe, they set forth their concept in their poor language of their needs, seizing multitudes who do not know how to think, playing on their unhealthy fanaticism, the heritage of spiritual primitivism, as a means for instant salvation. All it takes is a bit of human effort to earn eternal recompense, or, if this is not achieved, terrible eternal punishment without the slightest possibility of receiving mercy or compassion. Nevertheless, they emphatically claim that the all-loving Father is also all-merciful, in an absurd paradoxical placement. I would like to make another pause here and kind of do some highlights here, because we go back to what we were talking or learning with our friend Julio Padovan last week, that these teachings, to a certain extent, they're very valuable. They're amazingly valuable, and they still are. The necessity that we have to grasp something, and here comes the idea that we shouldn't judge anybody's faith. They need something. People sometimes they need something more concrete, to say the least, to grasp, right? To continue with their lives. However, as we're saying here, it's important for us to think a little bit. How rational is this, right? When we're told that if we ask for help, we will be free of all of our difficulties that we created, right? If we don't do it, we will go to eternal punishment, through eternal punishment. But at the same time, we are taught that the Father is an all-loving Father, that God is all merciful. So it doesn't correspond to one another, right? And then when we are in the state of discarnation or going through a tough time like this, of losing the physical body, or even in our difficult moments of life, we despair because what we thought that was concrete, for us to continue with our lives, in fact it's something that makes no sense, and the confusion sets in, and then we move on to other, more difficult state of mind, right? But he continues, saying the following. Gotta go back here. um, Thus, the automata of faith stagger around in the physical world, deceived by fraudulent information, assimilated without reasoning, and received as an inheritance from their ancestors, whom they think they are honoring by also following their precepts, entering the spirit world without concern for their self enlightenment. Their dogmas, their ceremonies, all developed with cruelty, belittle humans, enslaving them in fear and imprisoning them in ignorance, making it very difficult to enlighten them during the first stages after the grave. It is at this stage of suffering that the compassion of heaven sends these sufferers back to the blessed earthly school for reincarnation in severe expiation of or harsh trials, enabling them to understand the laws of justice and the duties that must comprise every lifetime. And one may think that perhaps, okay, sending these minds again, because we're talking about the spirits who recently discarnated, and they're still connected with the physical body at the beaches of the Indian Ocean. And I know it's a very distressful picture to bring, but we have to connect with what's happening. Much like what's happening to many of us who are discarnating suddenly nowadays, our family members, our friends, right? Entering this continuation of life. What kind of preparation we have? What are we connecting right now so that when this happens, we are not suffering more, right? And if we're suffering, is it, we like to ask, is it a punishment that God is allowing these souls to reincarnate, and as we see here, in a process of expiation or harsh trials? Not necessarily. Is this compassion that allows them to try again? Wait a minute, we didn't do it correctly. We used faith to impose. We allow ourselves to be imposed when we could also have allowed ourselves to say, wait a minute, doesn't make any sense, or this does not go along with my faith, with my ideals. There are the good parts of it, but this I would like to go ahead and go further and study more, right? Or go beyond of what the status quo is saying. And that's why Spiritism is very interesting, because Kardec himself asked us to question when we receive a message, whether is a mediumistic message or any teaching, that we question with respect, not to be disrespectful, but to truly allow ourselves to understand and say, okay, this makes sense, this does not make sense, how is this helpful in my life, and whatnot. And he continues, even if one fiercely denies the doctrine of physical rebirth, that does not keep it from being a blessed universal law of unparalleled significance, without which we would remain stuck in the initial stage of evolution without a chance of intellectual and moral growth. Perfectly compatible with the law of progress, which only occurs through the process of personal experiences or reincarnations, reincarnation gradually enables the inner God to develop and grow deep within this spirit, drawing it towards to God. As we watch the bitter pain that dominates these thousands of spirits mistaken in their beliefs about the abundant life, in their fixations about transitory things as if they were permanent, once again we realize that we, earthly individuals, accustomed to the vagaries of selfishness, are still stuck in spiritual infancy and lack the sublime enjoyment of solidarity and love. So no matter how much we deny, no matter how much we go against it, progress is inevitable. If we allow ourselves to kind of take a look at our lives, right, and compare ourselves to when we are at an infant state, we have seen that we have progressed. we can do this, 2020 and 2019, how much we have progressed, hopefully, with the pandemic, right? We will see that we are always evolving. And this is happening gradually, but for sure it's happening, right? And it's important that we bring this to our teachings, to our own enlightenment, without the idea that this has to be applied to this or that person, right? But moving on, I said it was only 2 slides. I do apologize. It's actually 3, but we're almost there, so we can make our conclusions and we can go into our questions and comments. It says, religion tells us that the grave does not mean annihilation. Hence, we know that life goes on. It would be logical, therefore, to live in a manner consistent with that belief, but that is not the case. Disputes and material fixations control our inner world in such a way that, consciously or not, we indefinitely postpone the moment of departure from the body. When we are young, we long for it to occur in an old age. And when old age settles in and we sense the approach of discarnation, fear assails us, leading quite a few of us into depressive disorders, rebelliousness, or some other type of imbalance. Isn't that the truth in our lives, right? When we talk about death, in certain circles of or family circles or with friends and all, we always, I don't want to die now. I don't want to do. And when it happens, what kind of preparation do we have? Do we think about this, not in a morbid way, as Joanna D'Angeli reminds us, to think about death, to think about leaving the physical body, but in an enlightening way to say, am I doing the things that I need to do to go on to the next state of my life, right? And leave a legacy of good things without showing off, as we saw in the opening message, but to truly say, okay, I did what I could, and I'm here to learn more so I can do even more, right? So the teaching is very clear to all of us. And the other parenthesis that I would like to make right now, that it has nothing to do directly with the message, but when Dr. White is explaining this to our friend Mr. Miranda, he's saying when we are young, we long for it. He uses the word "we" as if he has been through this as well, right? He understands the reason why these individuals are going through this. Fortunately, he is in a position right now of someone who is helping, who have gone through, and he can teach now. But he knows that he himself went through this as well. So he's talking as if he was part of it, of this whole program, this transformation, and he's there to help. This is very interesting because sometimes we use the words of the teachings to apply onto others, right? And we forget that we have been there before. And we forget that we also are no different as individuals, perhaps in different state of life, or ascend, or have ascended a little bit further than these other brothers and sisters who are in need of help. But he was there too once. So it's really interesting that it's very humble, right? Very logical, but very humble as well. It would take only a few moments of daily reflection about the transient of physical life to prepare ourselves to joyfully wait for the moment of discarnation. And then he gives this beautiful idea, right, to us. What prisoner does not yearn for the freedom, and who, at seeing a fellow cellmate set free, does not also long for that great moment? And with what joy he greets it when he arrives. And we're talking about the discarnation process. Yes, it's nothing different than discarnation process where we can ascend to the other side or go back to the spiritual reality. The metaphor explains very well how we should behave, but unfortunately, that does not happen because we're so attached, right? We're so connected with the material life. And not too far off day, however, will come when religions, and going back to the teachings of religions now, will be access doors. I'll say it again, access doors to life, and not the prison of ignorance and absurdity. Thus, let us remember that all the prophets and founders of religions, however lofty and noble they may have been, cannot be equated to Jesus Christ, who sent them to earth so that they would weaken the shadows of cruelty a little in order that he could establish the beacons of the kingdom of heaven in the world. Even those who came after his advent have been ministers of his kingdom. Hence, the Comforter he promised has come to hurry those days of true communion between Creator and creatures. So we can never be more than this great brother, Master Jesus. We can never be more than our Creator. They all of the these helpers, right, who were sent under the guidance of Jesus. They were great, but we can never allow them, which I like to say that they don't think that way. They never thought that way when they were bringing the new the different teachings, different religions. We tend to do that to make not only people, situations, but things as well as greater than our Creator. But that was not the intent. And the time will come, as we studied with Spiritism, that Spiritism, in fact, is not a religion, but the future of religions in terms that we will be able to see minds like Dr. White, an Anglican, teaching the life after life, the continuation of life. We will see friends like Abdu, Father Marcus, right, teaching religion with this progressive idea of reincarnation, right, and helping others understand that we have to progress as well. And it is at this point that he finalizes and says, therefore, let us not get discouraged. Let us fulfill our duty. What is he trying to say? Work, charity. We should be charitable. We should be able to put into practice what we learn, right? Because if the more we say and we don't do anything, the worse we'll get. Because without the execution of these programs, these teachings, we're not moving anywhere. It's beautiful to have it on paper, but we are being called to really fulfill our duty as an individual. And you may ask, what am I supposed to do? Well, look around you. What is your position in life? Are you a husband, a wife, a child? Are you a student, right? Are you a co-worker in an environment that needs you this or that way? Do your job well. Be whatever you need to be the best way possible. Serving others, that is our duty, right? And to finalize, and it's interesting that Dr. Miranda or Mr. Miranda, I keep mixing the titles there. Mr. Miranda says the following, and he's very puzzled at the end when he says, I found myself amazed and edified, wondering how the noble doctor had come to these conclusions, knowing that he had been of the Anglican persuasion in his previous existence. And then Dr. White turns to him and say, my dear Philomeno, knowledge travels from here to the earth, not from there to here. Thus, participating in study groups in our community, I learned about the Spiritist revelation and its greatness for human beings. That is why I am engaged in the task of our group. And then once more, he says, the endeavor waits us. You will find your answers as you work with Jesus for the good. Because he was still thinking, I mean, how could this be, right? A man of the Anglican faith. And we can go back a little bit also and said, and look at Father Marcus, Abdu, of a Muslim faith. We also have the assistance, with the torch of light, enlightening others, right? So all of these teachings, all of these, let's say the cooperation, right, under different religious umbrella, it's so intense, it's so interesting, that really allows us to project ourselves in the times that are to come, right? The post-transition that our planet is going through right now, right? That things will come together. And a highlight that I would like to bring, that God does not bring these something that perhaps I have omitted or forgot to say. I shouldn't say omitted, but I forgot to say in previous sessions, that God does not bring these difficult moments, geological difficulties that we see on Earth, to punish us. This is a natural process that planet Earth is going through. The problem is that, number one, how we see it, how we perceive it, and what we do in the aftermath, right? And if we find ourselves in these difficult moments, geological moment or transformation or changes of Earth, we have to do our best. Nowadays, we are really fortunate that we have technology assisting us to perceive, right, or to analyze a storm before it hits, right? And we can do the things that we need to do to prevent greater damage. So we have made some advancement, and things are much better now than it used to be, where 100 years ago, we didn't have telescopes to say, okay, now there will be a storm. Now we can actually, with our telescopes, with the not telescopes, the advancements that we have right now, technological advancements, can predict actually storms pretty fast, and it's processing, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, 3 to 4 minutes at a time. So the information is coming very fast to us. It's just a highlight that I'd like to bring, because sometimes we allow ourselves to believe that the tragedies of life, whether personal or collectively, is something that God is imposing on us. But it's just a normal process, right? It rains, it shines, we go through these different moments of our changes of our of weather, of geological changes, but with it we can actually grow, and again, individually and collective as well. So this is the moment that we would like to open up for comments and questions that you may have. If I cannot answer, I always like to say I'll try to connect with Mr. Miranda and somehow find the answers, or we can go to the literature for sure and find the answer.
Hey, Leo. Uh-oh. You're muted, Leo.
Let's see. Can you hear me now?
Yes. Hey.
I cannot hear you. Give me 1 second. Let me go ahead and
Sure.
Something happened here. All right, face-to-face camera, standard camera audio, Logitech. I'm still having trouble.
So as you're trying to get your technical issues in check, we're just going to be pulling up some of the questions that were posed in the chat. There are questions both from the Facebook Live as well as for our YouTube Live. And we also have a question that was posed in our WhatsApp group chat. So the first question was posed by Ms. Paula Schmidt, and she says, as we are responsible for everything that concerns us, why do we tend to blame others for causing us pain when we have actually attracted the situation? Can you hear me, Leo?
Now I can hear. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay.
So I just read off a question that Paula asked. I'll read it again. It's okay.
Okay, please.
She said, as we are responsible for everything that concerns us, why do we tend to blame others for causing us pain when we have actually attracted the situation?
Good question. I hope I had a direct answer for every case. And what I like to say is every case. So unfortunately, we have to generalize here, or I shouldn't say even unfortunately, but the idea is the lack of responsibility, right? The lack of, or perhaps the fear of responsibility of what happened, right? What you have to do to fix that issue. We are not in a state of being proactive. We are reactive in our state of mind right now. So it's just a way that I like to see it. It is this immaturity that we have, that we like to pass it along to others. Our responsibilities to fix what has been done, and to take a responsibility to act correctly as well, because it's easy for us to take the wide entrance road, right? And Jesus had reminded us that the narrow door is the hardest, but the correct one, and that is the way that I would like to explain this. Now, if it's something that that we can generalize and apply to every situation, we don't know, because I would like to um, say that some individuals may have things from the past, difficulties from the past, that perhaps this is perhaps it is the reason why they're vibrating in such a way, right? But inherently, we also have received from religion our customs that it's okay to err, and someone else will go ahead and pay the price. We ask for forgiveness, and everything is okay. When we see in the physical world, things are different. If you take something away, you need to put it back. That's the reality of life. So I don't know if it answers the question, but it's just my perception, and hopefully that helps.
Wonderful. Great response. So we're going to hop on over to Yasko's question. She writes, "Great material, Leo. Thanks. On chapter 9, Cynthia's case, I kept wondering about the responsibility of the parents not only failing to protect her, but throwing her at the age of 14 years old into this marriage to an old, quote, well-established man that threw her into this business of selling her body and perhaps perpetuating the bond of evil partners of previous lives. I wonder what the parents' conditions are in the spirit realm."
Yasko, great question and great comment. And now, one of the things that I like to say, yes, these cases, they have a purpose, a direct purpose, but it doesn't stop us. And I understand this because I do this too. From wondering, what's the responsibility of this person? What's going to be the responsibility of the perpetrator, of the victim, and all these things? It's okay, as long as we're not caught on these bunch of questions and we don't look at it, the situation directly that Mr. Miranda was trying to enlighten us. But great question. I think also that we should take this in perspective. We don't know. There's not much of information that Mr. Miranda actually tells us. What we learn is that the father discarnated of this grace, and the mother also discarnated of this grace. Now, you have to understand as well that the custom was to allow the daughter to be given to marriage at an early age, and that's their custom. We have to respect that. It was not to give the daughter to an early marriage and then turn around and do what this man did to their daughter, right? The state of confusion, the state of perturbation, for sure, to see a daughter being taken to certain condition must be great, and it's really hard for even to us to understand or to perceive, right? But I don't think that was their intention. So with this idea of intention, that's not what they intended to do. For sure, with God's grace, they will be excused to a certain extent, but there is a level of responsibility that we're studying here, and it goes back to what we were saying at the beginning, that the responsibility of our acts cannot be taken away, right? And what happens in the afterwards, we will be there together to respond to it. And no wonder we see cases of families coming together, reincarnating in circles of life where you see that things are so harsh at times. Their connections are not well established, or let's say they were established at once and they were made sour because of the ideas or ideals of some, and now they have to repair. And the reparation is very difficult, right? So that's what I would like to bring, that it's okay for us to analyze, but let's be careful. But it's a true question, because if I'm not the one being afflicted or the victim, or if I'm not the one perpetrating or causing pain, but I am connected. I know of a friend. I know of this person, or I heard of this person. Guess what? We have a connection. So our presence in this situation is for us to be of Mr. Miranda's to pray, of Dr. White's to go and help. If we cannot help directly, physically speaking, let us send the good vibrations. Let us envision that in this case right here, this young lady now is reincarnating, hopefully, in a new life with these individuals to repair all of this. And the same we should do to our lives when we come in contact with negative examples like this.
Wonderful, Leo. It's very deep questions and answers here, and just overall that this topic is so deep. Something you said reminded me, and I'm not sure where in the Gospel according to Spiritism it is, but there's some passage that talks about, if parents fall short of their responsibility, they will have to later on watch as their children suffer. Sometimes as the parents are already in the spirit realm and their children are still on the earth, or whatever the case may be. But oftentimes, parents who do fall short will be watching their children in the spirit realm or in the physical realm suffering due to the consequences of their actions. So just something to think about as well. And that's not because God is a punishing God, or God is saying, I'm going to punish you for not being a good parent, but just the nature of how things, as you said, the nature of how the laws of action and reaction, how life works. We reap what we sow. So just wanted to add that in there too.
That is a great comment, Kirsten, and it reminded me of something that I believe I was talking to Daniel the other day. And when I look back, and I try to analyze a little bit of how, I try to, relate to my kids, right? A lot, and I'll say this in both ways, unfortunately, and fortunately, has to do with what I received from my parents, right? In no way, shape, or form, I should blame my parents for what they gave me, because what they gave me is what they gave me is what they received, if I make sense. So what they gave me was hopefully enough that I can now transform it in such a way that it will be more for my kids, and hopefully what my kids are receiving now, they will transform as well, to give to their kids. And we also have to understand that, let us say, as an example, since the Oscar did this, and we all do this together, let us say that the mother and the father, they were also of an arrangement, a marriage, right? The mother, her mother, Cynthia's mother, was given to marry her father. Let us put this as an example. It was okay in their custom to give of their daughter to a marriage. Do you understand? So they're allowing them, they're just giving a continuation to what they received. Not necessarily was wrong in their idea, in their faith, to do this. And unfortunately, it took the way it took, yes. But what I'm trying to say is that religion, and now since we also brought the idea of religion here, is brought to us the way it was received by those who brought to us. So we got to discount a little bit. We also have to understand that the imperfection of these teachings, right, based on who is bringing to them. And I'll put myself on the spot right now. If we were to contact Divaldo Franco to talk about these 2 chapters today, he would do an amazing job, way better than Leo, because the teachings that he has is much better than mine. So I am bringing these teachings here based on what I understand, the information that I can read in between the lines and bring to you. So we have to discount what our parents brought to us, right? And what we really have to watch, what we're giving to our kids, to one another, not only our kids, to one another in our interaction. So what we received was based on what people knew. Just a highlight there.
No, absolutely. You bring a really great point, Leo. And if I can add to that as well, we can only give what we have.
Yes.
And I think that's a great perspective as children. to, look at our parents with some empathy and with some forgiveness, I guess, in a sense. And definitely God, I'm sure, takes multiple factors into consideration. And you're right, because at the time that many, I'm trying to think of my words, like a century ago or so, it was quite common for society, for parents to marry off their children kind of young. As far as, being a teenager, that was common. So it could very well be that the parents had every, positive intention. It was a socially acceptable thing. That's what people did.
Right.
And perhaps the parents had no way to know that this particular man would have led her into such debauchery and such a lifestyle. Right. But who's to say? That's not for us to judge. That's only for God to oversee all that. But definitely some great food for thought, and a great reminder for us parents to evaluate how we are behaving. Moving along to some of the other questions and comments. It looks like someone named Kirsten made a question. I'm gonna read hers. I'm sorry, our technical staff is trying to talk to us, and I don't know what they're saying. Okay, so let's jump to Paula's additional question. She says the guiding question might be, who or what dies?
The guiding question?
Yeah, I think because you were talking about something and she posted that. Let me see what she says.
Yes, I don't remember, and I'm sorry that I cannot daily reflection about.
Yeah, I think it was kind of posed when you're discussing something. It's kind of like when you make a question or place a question directly after you're making a comment, and it's
gotcha. Okay,
so, Paul, if you're listening,
please clarify your question.
Yeah, please clarify your question. She did just make a comment. She said, "Leo, that was a great endorsement of parenting skills and education."
Yes,
Awesome.
and if I'm not mistaken here, when she's talking about the who and what dies, we have to bring everything to context here. The physical stays, right? Our physical body stays, but the suffering doesn't die, right? Our connections don't die. The way we live, it will continue on, right? So perhaps the idea, if I were to lose my body of like a Leo, the physical man, will die. The way he was living will continue on. Much like, if I'll transcend now. Hopefully, this will be better. If we think of a painter or a sculptor, right, someone who live in the arts and does great work, right, that legacy will live on, right? In the same way, if the person lives a difficult life, that thought will live on. And in some ways, this is how a lot of materialistic and atheists also believe that the what lives on is the idea, the thought, but we cease to exist. So I think this is what she was connecting with, and that is true, because we have to think that what is really dying, right? It's mainly the physical, mainly it's the transformation of the physical. But it's important for us to analyze that the way we're vibrating right now, the way we're thinking, will continue to exist. Much like the connection between the Cynthia that we find in Cynthia's case, right? Between her as well as the man who is victimizing her. The spirit who was victimized, and that it started in the physical realm when they were reincarnated and continue on. So that connection lived, it continued until she lost her physical body, and the helpers came and allowed her to be disconnected from the physical body, and they put her to sleep so they can reevaluate the situation.
It's fascinating stuff. And as a follow-up question that Kirsten posed was, if we die and are reborn so many times, why does it persist as something humanity is so fearful of?
So why do we keep our fears? Is that what your question?
Yes, I mean, if we die and we're reborn, and we die, we're reborn, why are we still so afraid of death? Shouldn't we have this already sensation of, well, I've been through this before, so it's okay?
One thing that we need to take in account, and this is a teaching for me, right? The law of preservation. If we didn't have the law of preservation within us in our conscience, we would jump off a cliff. We do more daredevil stuff. Leo, perhaps with growing up, would have done some other crazy stuff that he used to like to do. But that is really interesting in ourselves, that we really take care of ourselves, and we have so much that inside of us that we take to another level, that when we come in contact with the physical, we tend to grab it and to really hold on to it and say, no, if something happens, this is it, right? And that fear establishes. So that is number one. That's the way I would like to explain this to our friends out there. That is the law of preservation taken to an excessive level, if we can say it that way. The second thing is this: that just because we reincarnate over and over and over, that we allow ourselves, and I say allow ourselves, to liberate ourselves from the materialistic ideals, right? It only happens little by little. So this connection, or the let go of the materialistic ideal, it only happens, in small amounts, if we can say that way, so that when we are coming to the physical body, sometimes instead of saying, okay, the body, the physical life is not everything, and in other circumstances of our lives, we become more attached, and that's why it's very hard to let go of this idea. Now, we do see examples, though, of this letting go of the material life in different scenarios of our life. For example, we're not looking in our society anymore of the idea to have, right, but to take pleasure on things that are temporary. There is and now I'm kind of extrapolating into a different area of our lives, but kids nowadays, they don't think of having a house anymore. They're thinking that perhaps having a house will be a burden for them because they will be attached. People don't think of having cars anymore. They wanted to go ahead and allow themselves to travel. They want a public life, in terms of public transportation, than having the burden of having to maintain a car. These are glimpses of how we are transforming ourselves, that perhaps the physical body we will still preserve, we will still maintain, but we're not going to be as fearful of letting it go when we have to let it go. And I would add it to the end of all this, that the spiritualist ideals are more evident than not in our lives. And this is not Leo saying. We can go back to the codification. The fifth book of the Spiritist teachings tells us that we are becoming less materialistic. This new wave of reincarnating spirits are less materialistic, and this is something that they bring with them, that they learned from the past, and they're reincarnating to enlighten us in this new, less materialistic life. But the progress that we make in terms of letting it go of the fear of death is very minimal, and it should be that way, because otherwise, the barbaric life would have reigned in our society, right? Instead of changing and saying, no, let's preserve life. Let's not treat life as we used to treat it, and abandon the idea that we should not kill one another. So that's a very good question, but it's very small changes that we're making. But the enlightenments are there for sure.
Great insights, Leo. Thank you so much. So we're going to share some, just a couple people or some final comments. Just Ida Sema saying, great talk, Leo. Thank you so much. Raquel saying, thank you, Leo. And others as well. So this was a fantastic 2 chapters to go over, Leo, and we can't emphasize enough that this study on this particular book that you're doing is so important for us to go back and read and study ourselves as well, or even beforehand, in preparation to listening to your talk, because these books are truly like textbooks.
Mhm.
They're not, coffee table reading material and something we pick up occasionally when we feel like it, but definitely it's something more that should be continuously studied and reread over and over again.
Right.
Leo, before we end, do you have any final thoughts you wanted to share?
Oh yes. And I would like to ask our helper Daniel to bring this to the screen, what we have covered thus far, and the actual two next chapters that we're going to be discussing on session 6. We have covered 10 chapters thus far. Next two chapters will be continue learning and life responds as planned. So we ask you to please, 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 as you said, Kirsten, this is not just a book that you sit down and just kind of turn pages here and there, but you really study. Sit down and study them. The chapters not that long. So if you read a chapter every other day and make your conclusions, try to connect with these higher minds. Understand what this planetary transition is. That is not a mere transformation that God imposing on us to make us suffer, but to really awaken us and say, let us look at the greater life, right? As much as we're going through the pandemic right now, and I'll make a final comment, not to criticize, but the other day I was actually coming back from a grocery store, and as I was pushing the cart back into the location where we parked the little carts and everything, the shopping carts, I noticed on the ground a bunch of gloves and masks that people were discarding, right? Instead of discarding that in the trash. And I started to think, in a negative way, I'm not gonna lie, I'm part of this world as well, folks, that have we learned? Are we learning anything from this, right? And then after my 2 or 3 sentences of discontent, I start thinking with myself, am I learning, right? Am I really analyzing what's happening and bringing something greater of myself into the world, right? And that's what I would like to live with you, because when we talk about the planetary transition, it cannot be, as we learned tonight, us putting the blame or the responsibility on someone else, but for truly for ourselves to look at it and say, okay, how am I contributing to a better planetary transition so that I live something better for myself when I come back, for my kids, and for when I come back, because we will be returning soon. We will lose this physical body and we will be returning soon. And that's the beauty of this whole thing, that we're leaving something for us later on to come back and say, let me continue that work or this work, right? Or start new works, because what we started in the past hopefully will be continued by someone else. So continue learning. Life responds as planned in the month of June. Be there or be square. And we will discuss these chapters. So thank you so much, everyone, for your attention and all your comments as well. Thank you. And thank you, Kirsten and Daniel.
Sure. Thank you so much, Leo. Before we go to our final prayer for this evening, we wanted to share on the screen, in response to the questions that we've received from people asking how they can donate to the Spiritist Society of Baltimore, how they can contribute. You'll notice a QR code at the bottom of your screen there, and you can scan it with your iPhone, with your smartphone, and it will lead you directly into how to give a donation to the SSB. Or if you prefer, the way that's been in existence for quite a while is going to our website, www.ssbaltimore.org, and you click on the option for donations. So again, you can just, if anyone, because people were asking us, how can I donate? How can I support the SSB? Again, you can just scan the QR code, and it's there. It's also on our website as well. It's just a fast and easy way just to be able to donate. So Thank you, everyone, for participating and for watching this evening. And let us close out this talk today with our final prayer in giving immense gratitude for our spirit mentors, our guides, for all those who helped to facilitate this study session this evening. We thank all those minds and hearts that vibrated for the benefit and the success of tonight's presentation. And we ask and we hope, dear Creator, that our loving vibrations may also be utilized to help those who are truly in need. In gratitude, we are thankful for Spiritism and all its teachings that is given to us freely and for all. And we take this opportunity to pray for those who are truly suffering during these times of planetary transition, during the natural disasters, pandemics, and many other challenges that are presenting itself. We thank you for this beautiful evening, and in remembrance of our dear Jesus, may we keep his teachings in our heart. We thank you, and so be it. Thank you, everyone, so much for watching. Please don't forget to check our website for our calendar to get updates on what's going on in the month of June. And if you ever have any questions or concerns, please don't hesitate to reach out to us either on our social media page or directly through our SSB website, ssbaltimore.org. Thank you, everyone, and have a great evening.